Hello, everyone. So glad to welcome you to this webinar, Getting Present During Sex. And I am your host, Dr. Pavini Moray, and I'm teaching today on behalf of Wellcilium, your online school for sex, intimacy, and relationship skills. And this webinar is part of our free monthly webinar series, and we asked you the topics you wanted us to cover, the things that you wanted us to solve for in your sex and intimate lives, and this webinar series is the result of that. So um, that's what we're going to talk about today, is what happens when you're not present during sex, why aren't you present, and what it could be like to be present during sex. And so we'll cover three tools for really being present in the moment. You'll learn a really simple strategy for dealing with fear, worry, and distraction so that you can really enjoy what's happening when you're in your intimate moments. And we'll do together a simple practice for attending to your own body and your own experience during intimacy. So, before you can really be present during sex, we need to know what's going on. We need to assess what's up that you're not being present during sex, because there's lots and lots of really good reasons people are not present during sex. And so I'm going to go through those right now. So, of course, there is the perpetual to-do list, right? And so for some folks, they can't feel like they can fully relax until they've done the things that they need to do, the laundry is folded and put away, and that really enables them to be more present. So if you have a to-do list in your head, that could be something that might be interfering with you being really present during your intimate moments. Um, I think overall being up in your head is something that I hear a lot from folks, right? I'm just on my head when it comes to sex. I can't get out of my head. I don't know how to get out of my head. Super common, right? There is a leap from thinking into feeling, right? The attention when you're in your head is on your thoughts. It's on what you're thinking about, right? And you're placing attention on that. And during sex, that is not always the most helpful thing, right? You want to be placing your attention on what you're feeling in your body, what you're noticing. And so there is this leap that people have to make from the thinking self down into the feeling self, right? And there can be some discomfort in that change of states from our, get stuff done, get her done mode, right? Really thinking down into that softening and that relaxing. There's a definite change of internal state, and that bridging that gap can be challenging, right? Sometimes we don't want to, or we don't know how to. So, acknowledging that happens, that there is a change of state that has to happen to go from your work life, your home life, whatever it is that you're doing, into, okay, now I'm going to figure out how to be in my body so that I can really be present for the sex. Yeah. We're going to be talking a little bit in a few minutes about the role of distraction, but I want to just mention right now that sometimes you might not want to be having sex, right? It's hard to be present because it's not really what you want to be doing. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Maybe overall, you would like to be having sex, be having more sex, be intimate with your partner more. And just in this moment, you're not wanting to have sex, or maybe you're not wanting to have sex in general. And that happens, right? And there's some underlying things that you can look at. Is there any unresolved stuff that needs to be addressed, either personally or in the relationship, right? Sometimes folks like to think that it doesn't, whatever, these things are different, right? They're compartmentalized. Whatever's happening in the relationship isn't going to impact what's happening during sex, or it shouldn't, right? But there might be some stuff that your body is holding on to, right? And that needs to be addressed so that you can actually put your attention on being intimate and being close. And sometimes that stuff, that unresolved stuff is personal, AKA trauma, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Sometimes folks are coaching themselves through sex, right? In their head, they're kind of like, they maybe don't want to be having sex or that kind of sex, and they're kind of like talking themselves through it, like, it's okay, it's all right, just do it like this, just take a breath, and that kind of there can be some really helpful coaching that we can do in getting present, and there can also be this level of really kind of talking ourselves into a thing that we're not really feeling. Here's the thing: sometimes, we get in there, we get into the experience, and maybe we weren't feeling it, maybe we weren't super turned on, but like with stimulation, with closeness, we become more into it, right? And so kind of sometimes folks are thinking, well, maybe I'll get turned on. Yeah. um and so that, how long are you going to wait to see, right? And when does it start to cross your own boundaries? um Sometimes there's something that is urgent or pressing in your life, right? And this could be an ill relative or a big project at work. And that pressing thing, sometimes you're not turning your attention towards that thing, you're trying to avoid it. And it's just kind of like that aching nag, that you feel. So it's hard to relax and settle into sex. And sometimes it's just there's noise, right? There's this thing that's big and looming in your life, and it's actually needing your attention, right? And so to turn your attention from that could be problematic, or create impact that you don't want to create. Often people express that they don't feel safe, and um, again, body level safety, right? Safety in the relationship, emotional safety, um, and just kind of overall feeling safe in one's body, right? And this can be from, like, do I ever feel safe in my body, right? There's that experience. There's the experience of like, oh, my body doesn't actually feel safe in this particular situation. I'm going to talk more about that in a second. Or I don't feel emotionally safe in this situation. Yeah. And so that if your body isn't feeling safe for any of those reasons or others, it's going to be really hard to be present, right? Because your fear center is triggered, your amygdala is going off, and if there's vigilance, right? You're kind of, and it's really hard to savor and to relax into the moment when that's true. One of the reasons you might be not feeling safe is you're worried about interruption, right? You're worried about that you're going to make too much noise. You're worried about other people around you, or maybe you have kids and that's not very sexy. There's just that, there can be that vigilance about interruption that you can be worrying about. Um, I wanted to just mention the trauma thing because it's real, right? Sometimes there's unprocessed trauma, and that gets in the way, right? Like either there are triggers that happen during sex, and actually we're going to address that in a different webinar, or just the lingering residue of trauma that impacts presence on all fronts, right? And really can prevent us from being able to connect on a physical level and an intimate level. Um, Sometimes people are having sex for, which is a fine reason. It's not that it's a bad reason, but sometimes you're doing it for your partner. Sometimes you're doing it out of a sense of obligation. Um, those things obviously are going to have impact. Uh, there's this thing about your nervous system, right? And we're going to talk more about this later in this webinar. Arousal. When you get aroused, what happens? Does it feel comfortable? Does it actually feel pleasurable? Sometimes pleasure doesn't feel pleasurable. Um, and sometimes it feels like too much, right? Too much stimulation. And that can throw you out of being able to place your attention on the moment and be in the moment, right? Um, for some folks, it's really like embodiment is really scary, and so like you start to come into your body through sensation, through pleasure, whatever, and it's like, oh shit, I'm in my body. That doesn't feel comfortable, that feels scary or dangerous. um for other folks, there is this hump that they have to get over, and I'm not going to make a bad pun here, between kind of the state that they're in, and that like a softer, more relaxed, more open, more sensual, sexy state, it's like they just have to get through that to be able to relax. And so, you know, sometimes they're worrying about that, like, am I going to be able to get turned on, am I going to be able to get there? That can happen. um, you know, another thing that can really prevent you from being present is if you don't feel like you have the ability to really voice your own desires, talk about sex, talk about what's working, what's not working, um, name your boundaries, enforce your boundaries. Like you're worried that you might cross your own boundaries, or you're worried that a partner might cross your boundaries because either they just might cross them by accident or you might not voice them. So all of that stuff is what gets in the way of people being present. So context is really everything. So, you know, in hearing that list, think about what is true for you, what lands is like, oh yeah, those are some of the reasons I have a hard time getting present during sex and intimacy. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about distraction. So we talked about the reasons why we have a hard time being present, but I want to talk about the role of distraction, which might sound a little counterintuitive. Here's the thing: in sex, there is a constant flow of ebb and flow, right? Arousal and relaxation, arousal and relaxation. And our nervous systems can really benefit from both upregulation, arousal, and downregulation, relaxation, enjoyment, right? That it's like the in breath and the out breath. So if you're just having sex all the time, and you're just inhaling, imagine, right? It's like, I'm just upregulating, 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 upregulating. Just excitement. And there's no enjoyment. There's no exhale, savor. It's not going to work. So we need breaks. And distraction, the main role of distraction is to give us a break, right? So if you're in a sexy moment and all of a sudden you think about like, oh, I wonder what we're gonna have for dinner for tonight. You know, some people really beat themselves up about that. And I want to reframe that for you as this is normal. It happens to everybody, and there's a reason for it and a good reason. Like your nervous system is taking care of you, it's giving you a little break, right? Unfortunately, most people are like, oh, but I don't want to be thinking about dinner during sex, right? I almost said, I don't want to be thinking about sex during dinner, which maybe you do. I might. So, distraction, like, can you be gentle with yourself when you get distracted? Can you just acknowledge, like, oh, need a little break there? Great. Okay. And now I'm going to bring my attention back to my body, back to what's happening in the moment. So there's three things about distraction that I want to mention, and there's different correctives for each one. So the first one is this idea of erotic regulation, right? That within your nervous system, there is this window of tolerance where you're not understimulated and you're not overstimulated, and that's the sweet spot to hang out in. And you know, arousal increases your nervous system activation, right? And so you turn the volume up on stimulation, and that can be either physical stimulation or any kind of, like if you're watching porn or you're fantasizing or reading erotica or whatever, you know, some kind of like king scene, any other kind of like mind stimulation, right, is as distinct from touch or impact. So that stimulation level can go above your window of tolerance. And this is when people are like, oh man, I was just totally jamming out with my Hitachi wand, and then I got really numb and I couldn't come, right? It's like you've passed that window of tolerance, you're overstimulated at that point, right? And So that's the moment you take a break, right? That's the moment you start taking some deep breaths and you let your body down regulate and you trust that the arousal can and will return, right? Sometimes we get really grabby about our arousal. We're like, oh my gosh, it's here. I've got to act on it and I don't want it to go away. Oh, where did it go? Right. And so just trusting that that ebb and flow, right? Arousal and relaxation, excitement, enjoyment, that that's normal and natural. And it's actually what your nervous system needs to stay in the experience. Yeah. And you really can learn to work with your own nervous system, with your own erotic regulation. This is some of what I teach um, through breath, through voice, through movement, through sound, through your placement of attention. Like this is a learnable set of skills of how do I turn myself on? How, when I notice that my attention has gone, wandered, moved away, how do I bring it back? Because we want sovereignty, we want freedom in um, in our erotic processes, right? We want to be able to turn ourselves on and not be dependent on someone else to turn us on, right? We want to be accountable for our own turn on. Not, and absolutely we jive and we jam and we riff with other people and that intensity builds and it's sweet. But also we want to not just have that as our only means of access to our arousal. Yeah. So the second thing I want to talk about in terms of distraction is disassociation. And so what disassociation is, it's a way that you absence your attention from either a part of your body or your entire body or your experience, right? You put your attention somewhere else. And it can be somewhere else deep inside of you. It can be, sometimes people talk about like, I dissociated and I was like 6 feet above my body, or I was like in the corner of the room, right? So you're moving your attention from whatever is happening to something else. And it makes sense, right? It's overstimulating, it's too much, I'm too triggered, I'm too activated, whatever. I'm going to take my attention and I'm going to move it out. And this is a learned response often to overwhelm, traumatic situations. And it's a great gift, right? It's a great gift to be able to do this. So the first time I learned that I could do this, I had cut my finger. I was in high school. I had cut my finger deeply. I was in the emergency room and they were sewing at my finger and I was awake. And I was like, oh, but I don't actually have to be here. I can just be over there while they're doing this. And like how beautiful it's such a protective mechanism. Yeah. Um, and again, here often people feel a lot of shame if they're dissociated. Numbness is a sign of dissociation from a particular body part. The more you can hold it as like, this is me trying to take care of myself, the sweeter you can be with yourself about it, the better. And we want you to have choice. We want you to have freedom to place your attention where you want it, right? And so like that doesn't need to be the only tool in your tool belt when things feel overwhelming. Yeah. Um, it's really about finding the right speed and the right intensity level. So we can get super addicted to intensity. We all know that. Yeah. And if you find that you are dissociating a lot during sex and you don't want to, um, my advice is to turn down the speed of the interaction, turn down the intensity of it, add some slowness, like really building capacity through mindful practice, right? Of just a little bit at a time. Just a little bit. Like I'm just gonna like hang out for this hug and see if I can stay present in my body for like 3 seconds, 1 second, right? When we realize that we have to do capacity building work, folks often have a lot of grief about that. Like, oh, I don't want to have to do that capacity building work. I just want to be able to be present. I don't want to dissociate, right? I don't have the patience to learn, build my capacity over time. Right? That doesn't sound any fun. So to speak to that a little bit, there needs to just be some grief, right? That's really what that is all taking care of. Like there's a feeling of like, oh, but I want to be there and I'm not, right? And so there's a gap, there's a loss. And if you can give yourself permission just to acknowledge what is right there and to grieve what is not, and and just feel the feels that you feel about it, um, it just, you can circumvent that internal fight that you're having with yourself about like, well, I don't want to be dissociated when I'm having sex, but I am, right? One thing there is about getting really good at paying attention to your experience. Like, what feels like enough? What feels like the right speed? What feels like the right intensity? What feels like too much? When am I approaching that threshold at my window of tolerance, right? And that's the capacity, right? Like, oh, my capacity isn't up here. My window of tolerance is actually down here. And anything over that, I'm going to pop out of my body, right? So I can get good at kind of like starting to notice like, oh yeah, when I get to the edge of my window of tolerance, I notice that my eyes open, or I notice that I'm like rocking a little bit, or my breath is changing, right? I can start to notice like, what are those affects that happen, and I can then just like slowly like you back away from the lion, just to take a little break, take a little step back, slow down, take a breath, right? And that going up to the window of tolerance and then backing away, it's going to build trust that you're listening to yourself. Your nervous system is going to be able to like hang out in a much easier way, right? Because you're not constantly stressing yourself past your capacity. And just with time, that it's just like with any skill, you build the muscle with practice, right? And the muscle gets bigger, your capacity gets bigger. Yeah. And so you increase your capacity for body presence with very small practice over time. And really, it's my belief that the very smallest amount of practice can yield huge results. Often, like, um, I am thinking of a client that I had once who he said to me, well, I want to be able to hang out in my pleasure zone. So I'm just going to like stimulate myself for 30 minutes. And this was somebody who really struggled with receiving pleasure. And I was like, how about 30 seconds? Right? Like 30 minutes. Oh my God. That's so much. It's like, let's try the tiniest, like one sip of pleasure, one sip of breath, right? So that smallest amount of practice can really yield big results. So, erotic regulation, dissociation, and then let's talk about this other piece of like the struggling to feel into your body, the role of distraction as you struggle to feel into your body, hard to turn off your thoughts, anxiety, right? It can be really hard to unwind anxiety, and good sex happens when we're present and relaxed. Yeah. Um, and if you're somebody, I would say most of us are, if you're somebody who is dealing with anxiety, um, knowing that, right? And getting, and you can do this work in therapy, you can do this work with a somatic coach, but really getting familiar with like, what is the way I, that my anxiety, like what's the somatic architecture of my own anxiety? How do I do anxiety? How do I actually do it? It gives you more wiggle room with it, right? But so a couple of things that can help if this is your jam and you just can't get out of your head is first practicing giving yourself permission to feel good. This is a big one for folks, right? It comes up against worthiness and shame and all that stuff comes up here. So can you have some kind of practice of like, it's okay for me to feel good. I get to feel good. I get to feel good right now. Something like that, where you're practicing maybe even at other times besides intimacy, um, that you get to feel good, that permission giving practice. The other thing there is to do some kind of embodiment practice before sex, before intimacy, right? Like get into your body, do some yoga, do some stretching, do some breathing, do some physical exercise. Whatever you do to get into your body, do it. Um, you're going to do better if you're in your body, right? Have a plan also for how you want to deal with any intrusive thoughts. So if this is you, if you're struggling with your thoughts and you're like, oh, relax, relax, relax. Yeah, I'm in my body. It's all good. Oh shit, my work project, right? And there's that of like, okay, what's your plan for how to deal with that? Because that can just, you know where that goes. So that train comes through. How do you not get on? What is your plan? Yeah, and it might be something like, if I have an intrusive thought, I will pause, take a breath, say thank you and goodbye. And I will return my attention to whatever I was doing, right? Um, and, and just here a note on the pleasure, and this is in regards to everything that we've just been talking about. Too much of a good thing can be too much of a good thing for many reasons, right? It can be that your system just can't bear that much pleasure yet. Um, you don't feel like you deserve it, as I said, and you can't relax enough to enjoy it. So um, it's too much, trauma, anxiety. Those are kind of the three, and they all get interwoven and expressed in different ways. But those are kind of the three foundational places of like, why does pleasure not feel good, or why do we resist pleasure, right? It can be hard to receive pleasure for any of those reasons. So if that is true for you, you want to turn your attention towards this permission, just letting in the right amount for you of pleasure and sensation. So if someone was to give you your very, very, very favorite um, dessert, and let's say it's you're diabetic, right? And you want to enjoy it, like, what can you let in that's not going to blow you out? Can you have like one taste, or could you have one spoonful, or like one piece, like whatever it is for you, you get to decide what's the right amount I can let in. And this is going to be an experiment. You're not going to know probably till you go past your own boundaries, because we're all taught like, oh, pleasure is good, get it while you can, right? And so we're not taught to modulate, to have this concept that I have a capacity for goodness too, right? I have a capacity for how much pleasure I can allow in. And so it's fine to just like take a little bit and be like, okay, like I'm good for now. Like, thanks. Right? It doesn't, every sexual experience does not have to end in a full blown, orgiastic, ecstatic, orgasmic, like universe shattering thing. It can just be like, oh, I just had that moment of erotic exchange and that was enough, right? And you can build your capacity. You can make a practice out of it. Yeah, so really that's the thing of like, what's the right amount? So what I want to offer to you now is a practice. And so for this practice, it's really about like, how do you attend to your body in close moments so that you can be present? And really, presence starts with yourself, not with someone else, right? How do I bring my attention to myself and my own experience so that I can be in the moment when I'm in an intimate situation? So let me just talk it for a minute and then we're going to do it. In advance, it's super helpful to talk about this with your partner. Set it up with them so that either of you can take a presence moment whenever you need it. Like a presence moment, right? This is the practice, a presence moment. And a presence moment is a small moment where you close your eyes and you take a breath. You move out of physical contact with your sweetheart. And you just breathe. And this is what we're going to do right now, and I'm going to walk you through it. Okay. So go ahead and make your body comfortable and close your eyes. And just start letting the breath come in whatever way feels good to you. So, in your imagination, what I invite you to do, and adapt this if you need to for your own, however you need to make it work for you. What I'm inviting you to imagine is that you are all up close and personal with a lover, right? It's heavy, it's intense, and you're noticing in that moment, maybe you notice some body tension, or maybe you notice some distraction. Maybe you notice you're thinking about the laundry list, right? Maybe you feel like you're dissociating a little bit. Whatever it is, however you're noticing, whoa, something is suddenly not how it was a second ago. Just notice that. Like things maybe are feeling a little overwhelming, overstimulating, it's too heady. And what I want you to do right now is just reach out your hand and in your imagination, really reach out your hand and in your imagination, go ahead and give your partner 3 taps on the shoulder. And then that's the code that's letting them know that, oh, you're just activating the presence moment system. It's just been activated. You don't have to say anything. You're going to close your eyes and you're going to move away from them, like maybe about a foot, at least 6 inches, but maybe a foot, maybe 18 inches. Maybe you get up and go to the bathroom. Just give your body a little bit of physical distance, whatever feels right for you. Right? And just take it like 10 seconds, just breathing. And just do some breaths with some longer exhales than inhales. Do a couple more of these. And just notice in your nervous system what happens when you take a longer exhale, a little bit of body space. Feel your nervous system here. And then go ahead and gather. I don't know exactly how to explain this step, but imagine if like all the threads of your thoughts and your energy and your personality and everything, just like pull all that in towards the core of you, towards the center of you. Pull it all in, wind it all in. Like anything of you that's hanging out, just like bring it in towards the core, towards your center. And then let it out just to fill the edges of your physical container, right? So you're just filling your whole self with you. And just hang out there. And just check in here with your body. Do I need anything? Do I need to pee? Do I need to have a drink? Do I need a snack? Okay. And so now ask yourself, relating to this intimate encounter that you're on a presence moment break from, what do I want right now? And take some breaths into that question. Like you don't have to have an immediate answer. Like you can have more spaciousness here. And just notice, like, oh, I think I'd like to stay in this moment, but I'd like to just snuggle for a minute, or I'd like to change our activity, or I'd like to request some massage, or I'd like to kiss my partner's neck, or I'd like to receive a foot, whatever it is. Just imagine there's something, or I think I'd like to just get up and be done with this. Maybe I'd like us to go take a shower. Just like see if there's anything there. Yeah. And then the last step here is coming back from the presence break and communicating with your partner what's up. Like, thanks for the presence break. This is what I'm noticing in my body. This is what I'm thinking I might like to do next. How's that land for you? Right? So you're reconnecting, like you just like pulled everything in and just like took that presence break just for you. And then you're reconnecting, right? You're reaching out across and you're reconnecting with your partner. So I'm curious if any of you want to type in and share with me how that was for you. Like, just what did you notice as you did that practice? Yeah, thanks, Joelle. It changed my life when I realized I could take a break during sex and I could just tap out and I didn't even have to say anything. Revolutionized my sex life. It was like suddenly I could stay present. I could be in because I knew I had a little bit of space. I had an agreement with my partners ahead of time that I might need to take a break. They might need to take a break, right? Yeah. What else? Anybody want to speak to their experience just a little bit here? Joel, you said you used to take smoke breaks a lot, but a break just to breathe. Amazing. Yes, totally amazing. Yeah. It brought up worry if they were in the heat of it and I dissociate. Yeah, this is great. I'm gonna take a few more and then I want to respond to this. Yeah. Great. Oh, people are having anxiety about like what happens if I change my mind? What happens if it feels differently? Totally. Yeah. Anybody else? Feels good to imagine being able to ask for a break with a pre-planned strategy coming up. With the words in the moment feels hard. Yes, exactly. So no words, just tap out. Yeah. Cool. Well, let me speak to a little bit of this, and then because we're also going to have some time for some Q&A. So if you're in the heat of the moment, right, and you're like, oh crap, I just reached my capacity, and then the other person's like, wah wah, then they're disappointed. Like, yeah, that can happen. And I think the more trust in the relationship that you've established ahead of time in terms of like, what are we going to do if this happens for either one of us? I think it's really helpful. I want to give an example here from my life. I was going with Ari, my partner. We were going to see Alabama Shakes at in Berkeley at the Greek Theater, and we were super excited. The tickets were expensive, and we got there, and it was packed. And my partner has a lot of social anxiety, and so I was like super like, woohoo, we're here, Brittany, I love you, Brittany, and Ari was like, God, there's so many people, there's nowhere for me, he's freaking out. And because we have built so much trust in our relationship about like, it's okay at any time for somebody to tap out, right? Like I knew that I had options, right? I could just be like, sweetheart, it's okay if you want to go to the car, if you want to go home, like I'll take the BART back, no worries. Or like I could just be like, yeah, it's okay. Let's go find somewhere else to be. And if that doesn't work, let's just go. Like there was just ease, right? Because we had practiced this particular skill so many times of like, hey, we're in the intense moment and like one of us needs to take a break, right? It translated into in our lives. And so there was just this I that moment was particular because like it could have been a moment of real disappointment for me of like, oh man, really? Like I'm having such a good time and you're sucking and but it was just like, oh yeah, my partner's struggling. Like I don't want that. Like that doesn't make my time feel good. Like so let's figure this out. There's just this ease. And I think that you can build that into your sexual relationships. Like it's okay. There's going to be times that your partner's going to be in the same place, right? Um so I think that's one thing, Lex, that I want to say, and so like if you dissociate, I think one of the great practices of dissociation is to be able to communicate it in the moment, and that's super hard. Like to be like, I'm triggered or I'm dissociating, like in the moment when it's happening. I think it can be easier without words. Like if you have a sign. You could be like trigger, like whatever, set up ahead of time so that you can communicate, as soon as you realize what's happening. And it's just going to be part of it, like if dissociation is something you don't have a lot of choice over right now, um, you can just talk about that with your lovers, right? Just being like, hey, sometimes in the heat of the moment, I dissociate. And like, I don't even always know when I do. I'm going to try and communicate to you like this when I notice that it's happening. If you notice that I'm not responsive or that my face suddenly goes slack and blank, that's a good sign that I'm dissociating. And what I really want is for us to stop so that I can be present, because like it's no good for anybody when we're having dissociative sex, right? So that's one thing to do. If you are pleasuring them in that instance, that makes sense too. And so they probably don't want to receive pleasure from somebody who's dissociated, right? Like you wouldn't, I wouldn't. And so if you notice that, what you can do is um, gently and slowly bring the pleasure to like a pause point, right? And this does take some presence of mind, and I know it's hard when you're dissociated, but it's like at some point you're gonna be like, oh, I think I'm dissociated, right? And then just like stop moving your hands or whatever it is you're moving, and just stop, and then do your dissociative sign so that they know. Yeah. um okay, so I want to address this comment from Lee. I noticed anxiety about communicating, wanting to change what we're doing or stop. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we don't want to disappoint our partners, right? We don't want to, like, it's hard if somebody's super excited and the other person's like, "Oh man, I am not feeling this." We don't want to disappoint. We don't want to make them feel shame at all, right? And present sex is an honoring of um, who we are and who our partners are, right? And our partners get to feel disappointed. Like it's okay, and we can talk about it ahead of time of like, um, like how do we want to be with each other, right? How can I tolerate your disappointment? Um, how can you tolerate my disappointment? We don't want them to um, we don't want them to just like be disappointed on their own and not have any way to express it. Like they just have to be cool with it. Like they might be, like in the example I gave of being an Alabama Shakes, like I was cool with it. But I can imagine other experiences where I might not be cool with it. I'm really disappointed. Like, oh man. And how do we want to hold that with each other, right? So that we're not shaming each other, right? We're not, and we're also not squashing our own feelings. And so I often encourage couples of like, yeah, get fluent being present with each other to each other's disappointment, right? Like it's okay. It's okay for my partner to feel disappointed, and I don't have to take that on, right? We can start to create some boundaries there. Like, oh yeah, I totally know that sounds so, it's really disappointing. I'm really sorry, that you're feeling so disappointed, and I care about that. And like, I just also really want to be present with you. And I just noticed that I wasn't, and it's important to me to be present with you. Yeah. Good. Let me just see. Yeah. The importance of being selective about who you're with, that they'll be able to hold that space. Yes, absolutely. Um, it's right. It, uh, it's my sense that our own healing, um, like as we progress in our healing, then we want or we feel worthy that we get to have partners who can hold us and can meet us in these ways, and that we can have these conversations, and um, that if somebody can't, like, it's not that they're bad or that anything is wrong. It's just like, oh, like, we're not compatible, right? We're not a good fit right now because we're just in different places in our healing, and it doesn't mean I'm better or you're worse or anything. It just means we're in different places. Yeah. Cool. So, anybody have any questions about this before I give you just a tiny bit more? Okay. So, again, I just wanted to go over those steps um, for the practice of the attending to your body during intimate moments. So, you set it up ahead of time with your partner, presence moments. Um, you are in the moment and you start to feel weird in any number of ways, right? And you have already created the system of tap out with your partner. You tap them, maybe you grab their hand, whatever the system is that the two of you have created. You do that thing, and you move away from them. You get some physical space. You close your eyes, and you take at least 10 seconds to breathe and feel your nervous system. And you want to also be focusing on those long exhales, right? That's going to activate your parasympathetic nervous system, which will allow you to not regulate. Um, and then you pull yourself inside of yourself, all the thoughts, all the feels, all the energetic whatever's, like, bring it all in. Um, and then you let it out to the edges of yourself, and you check to see if you have any body needs, pee, thirst, hunger. And then you ask yourself, what do I want right now? And then you reconnect and you communicate to your partner. Yeah. So um, that's the practice. So, uh, yeah, I really hope that this has been helpful for you. Um, as I said, Wellcilium is offering a series of free monthly webinars, all sourced from what you said you wanted, questions that people have written to us or expressed on the Instagram, really trying to create pragmatic, helpful, immediately effective practices that can really help you live in your body and have a really beautiful and sovereign sex life. Um, I'm Pavini Moray, and I hope that you are following us already on Instagram at Wellcilium, WELLCELIUM, or you're on our email mailing list. Our website is wellcilium.org, and we have for we have all kinds of stuff, blogs and podcasts and webinars and classes and free classes. And next week is our big launch week, and we're going to have a bunch of events, live events online. So we invite you to check those out and come to those. Our next webinar is going to be next March the 5th. So we're aiming for the first Thursday of every month, loosely. Thursday, March the 5th, noon Pacific. And it's going to be on navigating triggers during sex. Like, what do we do when we get triggered, when we're in the middle of an intense moment? So do go ahead and register for that one. Everybody who registers will get the recordings and the links and all the good stuff. So hope to see you at that one. And until then, be well, be breathing, and stay in touch. Okay, bye everyone.